If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, I shall rank the main legions in Wraith the Oblivion in what I consider to be the best and worst across all editions. Whilst many would argue the guilds have the largest grip on Stygian society, falsely or otherwise, there is no denying the power that Charon's Death Lords and the legions they control are the true rulers of the Dark Kingdom of Iron. Not even the guild can crush the might of the hierarchy, which they have tried to do, but failed miserably. Each legion brings a different flavour to Wraith games, as one would expect through the 7, technically 8 ways one can die. Old age, disease, violence, madness, happenstance, despair, mystery, and fate. Whilst there is much debate to be had about which of these legions holds the largest monopoly over the underworld, we are not interested in such petty internal squabbles. We are talking about subjective objectives, as I present you the ultimate ranked list of the legions of Stygia. But before we get stuck in, I just want to clarify a couple of points. Firstly, in case I wasn't already clear, this is only going to focus on the main 8 legions in Wraith the Oblivion. Therefore, if you wanted to see what I thought about the Legion of Fools, the Legion of Red, the Rhythmic Legion, the Legion of the Worthy, or the Shivering Legion, well, it sucks to be you, I guess. Secondly, all thoughts and opinions are my own, so if you disagree with something I've said, that is totally fine. It does not mean that you are right and I am wrong, and vice versa. Number 8. The Skeletal Legion. Those who have seen my review of the Book of Legions would probably expect this legion to be near the bottom, though there are 2 others that could have been right at the bottom as well, but this one takes the biscuit for one specific reason. But let's not get ahead of ourselves for a moment. The Skeletal Legion claims those who died through the means of disease, ruled by the mad Mr. Bonyhand, the Skeletal Lord from his seat of dust. To start with the good, the Death Lord himself is a particularly interesting and frightening individual, a mad individual with an insane amount of power both as a wraith and as a political messiah-like figure. It is interesting to see how he handles his legion, as well as more religious beliefs that almost make him sympathetic with the heretics. That, however, is where the good ends, as his madness is described in all the worst ways you can imagine, as he is a 90s White Wolf character and just a cringe fest to digest. That, and there is a lot of weird focus on AIDS, particularly how he claims to have created it, and the Legion scorns and punishes those who die through AIDS, which is just not cool. It's not even edgy, it's just shit. What does the world of darkness benefit from the inclusion of AIDS in such a manner? Nothing, other than a cheap way of ostracizing your fan base. I rate this legion Grave Lord Nito, the first of the dead, out of 10. Number 7. The Silent Legion. Overseen by the Quiet Lord from his seat of silence, this legion welcomes those of despair, or, to use slightly less poetic terms, suicide. It is a very personal legion for probably all the wrong reasons, as they tread through many bits of unresolved trauma when reading about this legion. The legion itself is mostly respectful to its members, and the information presented about them in various books is mostly respectful too, especially when you consider what was presented at the time was during a decade where mental health, self-harm, and other triggering subjects were taboo and not to be discussed. There are plenty of network support groups, for lack of a better phrase, for new members of this legion, but as this is mostly a 90s work of fiction produced by White Wolf, there are many nicknames, occupations, and slurs that encourage and mock further self-harm and suicide in the underworld, and I honestly do not believe that any member of the legion would follow through with it. I can understand one shadow egging you on to kill yourself again or cut yourself, as that is your own inner monologue intensified to fiendish levels of power, which could force other wraiths to get you to do the same, but any other excuse is just sick. I rate this legion, nope, out of 10. Number 6. The Penitent Legion. The theme of madness brings us to the legion that holds those supposed crazy wraiths and the Laughing Lady who rules them from the seat of Sakor. Similar to the Skeletor Lord, Mad is only assigned to raving lunatics, which is such a boring trope, but I suppose it's the easiest and laziest way to show readers that the Penitent Legion are the crazies of Stygia that really bog the whole thing down. Without looking at my scripts from previous episodes, this is all that I remember, and the members are generally helpful to newer Legion members, more so than the previous Legion on this list. Even with a very powerful and frightening army, filled with intrigue and varying levels of horror, it is all overshadowed by ghost fishmouths, which is such a huge shame. I rate this Legion Storm Maidens out of 10. Number 5. The Grim Legion. Here onwards, we no longer have to deal with insensitive guilds and focus on the others, which is mildly concerning, as this is the halfway point. Anywho, the mighty Smiling Lord from the seat of Burning Waters commands his huge army of wraiths that, in life, were killed through violent means. They are only to be motivated by revenge and finding the ones that did them wrong with one and, well, potentially two power-hungry Death Lords, depending on the fiction you read. Besides this motive and the swapping of Death Lords during the Great War, there is no nuance of this guild whatsoever, which makes them incredibly boring and rather one-note. I rate this legion Stab, Kill, Die! Out of 10. Number 4. The Iron Legion. With the theme of one-noteness now emerging, the Iron Legion, ruled by the Ashen Lady on the Seat of Shadows. Here are your corporeal boomers who can't decide on anything with a simultaneously organised and disorganised military, fronted by an interesting British woman who steals things from across the world as part of her collections and private exhibits in her own salon. Witty reflection on the crumbling patriotism of the not-so-united kingdom, with an interesting duality between the Legion's gimmicks is all they are. On the plus side, a chronicle or one-shot around either of these two elements of the Legion would provide hours of interest and intrigue. I rate this Legion Pomp and Circumstance number 1 out of 10. Number 3. The Legion of Paupers. The Legion of Paupers houses wraiths that died under mysterious circumstances, and the leftovers from other legions. On a role-playing element, this legion can provide some of the most interesting narratives for players as they go about working out how they died, gaining contacts and enemies along the way. It is a legion that has a lot of empathy for its legionnaires, encouraging them to find out the answers to their death, even if it means breaking the dictum mortem to do so. The Beggar Lord interests me too, and it is interesting there is a Death Lord that isn't totally power hungry. He is just trying to do his job, a job that he doesn't even want to do. Of course, there are a lot of more sinister things afoot, stuff I've waffled about before. While certainly more engaging in the previous legions, they do have the problem of being somewhat forgettable, which I suppose is the consequence of having a load of misfits with no real common element besides the fact they have nothing in common. I rate this legion the Prince and the out of 10. Number 2. The Emerald Legion. Ruled by the aptly named Emerald Lord from the Seat of Thorns, the Emerald Legion takes care of those who succumb through the means of happenstance. They are a strangely jovial legion, not taking life or death that comes after it too seriously, going as far to name their deaths as the Lethal Oops, which is something I can never ever forget about. These are a whole hodgepodge of wraiths that follow the Emerald values, which is essentially a structural YOLO, which appeals to me greatly, rather than being total chaos. It's almost encouraging to see this positive try and try again mentality. Of course, it's not all fun and games, as there are plenty of casualties to be had, and their Green Team faction isn't exactly all that wholesome either. There are lots of exciting things to do with this legion, as well as the Emerald Lord himself, who has gone through many transformations over the game's metaplot. I rate this legion, we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, out of 10. Number 1. The Legion of Fate. Those that remember my review of the Book of Legions would remember how fondly I spoke of this legion, administered by the Ladies of Fate at the Isle of Eurydice and founded by the Lady of Fate herself. These enigmatic individuals foster those whose death was fate. The reason why I enjoy this Legion so much is just how different the Legion is to the others. There is a curious sense of mystery surrounding them because of how detached they are from the rest of the Stygian society, which is both understandable and terrifying. On one hand, they could be viewed as peaceful, Buddhist monk-like figures that only have to step in when shit really hits the fan. On the other, they could just be spectres, planning all sort of nasty shit, or on the path to transcendence. They hold a lot of power and intrigue, and I just find the Legion very interesting. Many a plot point is presented and suggested with their lore, and all of them are terribly engrossing. I rate this Legion Eve out of 10. And there we have it, ladles and jelly spoons, a ghostly ranking list like no other. Literally, as this is the only Wraith Legion's rank themed recording on the interwebs, which means I have popped another World of Darkness cherry. Cheeky gloats aside, this was an interesting list to conjure, as it occurred to me pretty early on just how indifferent I am about the Legions and can see just how problematic a lot of them are. And I know some of you strange individuals don't like these sorts of conversations because you don't like to think about grander issues in the world, and that's okay, cause touching some grass can help one think about how important it is to criticize problematic things in the world so we can change them for the better and everyone around. To be kept updated, follow the Lore by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.